Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Creating Holiday Music, a composer chat from unSUNg Concerts. This conversation will be led by our artistic director, Ariel Pisturino.
Okay, welcome. We are so excited to have you all here with us today talking about creating, composing, arranging new holiday music. We have three composers from our upcoming concert that will be a YouTube release on July 25th. So we have Dr. Zanaida Robles, we have Amy Engelhardt, and we have Dr. Michelle Green Willner. We also have Paul Gibson joining us because he has a lot of experience writing holiday music. So I guess where I'd like to start is what inspires you in writing holiday music?
First and foremost, like I really, especially in the last several years, have tried to broaden my concept of what holiday music can and should be, and how I can participate in creating and adding to that genre. For me, I've been really spending a lot of time around generating music for the holiday of Kwanzaa. There is a great need for Kwanzaa music because there hasn't been much written, primarily because it's such a brand new holiday. I mean, how many holidays are as new as Kwanzaa? It was just created within the last, 60 years or 50 years or so. So that is a really nascent holiday compared to, holidays from various other cultural traditions. So with that in mind, I feel it's imperative that we begin to create a body of literature that celebrates and lifts up that particular holiday for me.
Yeah, I'd never heard any Kwanzaa music until our December concert.
Yeah,
So please keep generating more.
and looking for more. The other thing about it is that there's also this, renewed, kind of curiosity on my part. Okay, so yeah, I know there's not a lot out there, but time continues and people are aware and stuff is being created. What is out there? And so now, there's also inspiration to continue to make connections and seek out other composers and artists that are contributing to the creation of this music as well.
Yes, agreed. Well, Michelle, you seem to mainly focus on Hanukkah music. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, I'm a very engrossed Jewish composer, and I've written many pieces based on Jewish subjects, historical and otherwise. And I've used lots of different types of poetic texts, whether they're ancient or they're modern. So addressing Jewish holidays is part of my MO. It's just the next step into immersing myself into the entire Jewish experience. And I have to say, I take great joy in it. I have written for the high holidays. I've written for many pieces for Holocaust Remembrance Days. So, and for Passover, but yeah, for many different holidays and remembrance commemoration days.
Amy, I feel like you've written for a bunch of different holidays.
Well, as a primarily a comedy writer and a humor writer, whether that is, choral or solo or whatever, everything's fair game. I try and approach these things as what hasn't been said about this. Is there a point of view that has not emerged yet? And I had a really interesting conversation with a congregant about religious music and holiday music in general, which was, they said, oh, well, how can you sing this stuff and or write it if it's not what you feel and you're not of that faith? And I said, well, that's the magic of music, is that I see the beauty in the work that's created and in someone else being inspired to do this. And you see it on that level and on a spiritual level. So, but we don't have to be in the same spiritual place to feel something beautiful out of it, to get something beautiful out of it, and to communicate the love that that is intended to be communicated. And that's the coolness about it, is that's where we meet, is in music, because that's the universe.
Totally. And also comedy, because who doesn't want to laugh? Paul, what inspires you to write all of your holiday music?
For years, I didn't write Christmas music. I thought, there's like a ton of it, and a little bit of it's good, and there's a lot of that. So why bother? But I was a professional church musician for 30 years, and I've sung all my adult life and was raised Catholic, it was inevitable that I would write something for Christmas. I first heard 10, 15 years ago about this Christmas carol competition that the American Composers Forum, what's the group, Vocal Lesson, sponsors every year. And every year they make it a different instrument with chorus. Sometimes they make it even a different chorus. And I thought, this is cool. And the one I saw was for cello and SATB choir. I thought, man, this is cool. And you get to pick your own text and everything. And so I was reading all of these old texts. I thought that'll be a lot easier than trying to find a person that is living and then work out a deal. I didn't have that kind of time. I came up with something and I was very confident, surprisingly confident for myself. And it turned out winning. And they included it on their next CD, which was very encouraging. So almost every year after that, for that competition, I would send in usually two works, two different pieces that contrasted. In case they didn't like one, they could pick another. Or if they had a winner that was really exuberant and they wanted to contrast, I would always send in two, and I never won again, except that my publisher liked a lot of them. And that has led to a lot of other things. So it turned out that writing for Christmas holidays was an exciting thing, very interesting and challenging. I really enjoyed it a lot over the years.
Kind of a happy accident in a way led you to writing all of this Christmas music, basically. You write for Christmas. Have you ever tried to tackle music for a different holiday?
Yes, being in working for the Catholic Church, I did a lot of the feasts, and a good number of my pieces worked for Holy Week and Easter, and some for Pentecost, and there's one that could be done on Trinity Sunday, and some are kind of Advent as well as Christmas related. So the church year, basically.
Okay. So you've never attempted like a Hanukkah piece or 4th of July or I don't know.
No, I haven't done a non-religious holiday. I've sung High Holy Days and I love them, but I never felt like it was enough a part of my background and tradition that I would be bringing something genuine.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that's totally valid. How about you, Zanaida, with all of your church background?
I have written some things for Advent. And it's interesting I think there are works, maybe other composers can relate to this, that you find you can have, there are ties to holidays. Maybe you didn't write that work specifically for a holiday, but you're like, oh, wow, that really speaks to some underlying theme in this holiday and helps illuminate, the message in there, which is really cool when that happens. I tend to keep gravitating towards Advent, but I can say maybe some things I would love to explore. I'd love to get into some music around Halloween or even some Dia de los Muertos stuff. Just kind of looking for some, doing some research there and identifying some ways to uplift some of those themes. And I think there's a lot of richness to explore compositionally around the idea of honoring ancestors, honoring those who have gone before. And there are other traditions have this too. And I think I want to stay away from areas where I don't feel I have as much of a personal connection. You might see some Juneteenth music coming from me at some point.
Nice. Yes, go for it. Get the ball going if it hasn't already.
Oh, I'm sure it's already rolling, trust me.
I'm sure too. Well, Michelle, have you ever tried your hand outside of temple music?
I don't think that there's a holiday that I wouldn't tackle, but I might tackle it from a different angle. I might choose a text that represents the chosen holiday, but it might be a secular text rather than a sacred text, which I've done before. I've actually written some children's songs about Halloween. I forgot totally about that. I don't have any, problems with tackling any holiday that, I might not be familiar with. I mean, there are so many different ways to tackle Christmas, so many Jewish composers have tackled Christmas. Irving Berlin described that White Christmas was actually written as a song of peace. He wrote it in 1938. And after the war, it was shelved for 4 years. And then after the war, he came back to it. And it was written as a song of peace. It wasn't written as a Christmas song. So I think there are many different ways of approaching something.
And Amy, we've already established that you write for everything. Do you feel that there's a holiday you want to tackle that you haven't yet?
In the comedic realm of things, it is my intense belief that anything can be a holiday. So if you want to have a day devoted to chalkboard erasers, you can do that. And how fun would it be to come up with traditions for a made-up holiday that kind of mirror the traditions of other holidays, both religious and secular, but are now applied to something that no one would think to apply. Useful things that people maybe don't celebrate. I like to focus on things that maybe don't. That's another secret to comedy writing, is focusing on something that is particularly small or possibly unimportant and making it the world.
Do you ever run into challenges when writing holiday music?
I'm going to say no, because it's kind of, when you're writing comedy, you respect what you're doing, but the traditions that you're maybe poking fun at. See, what I might consider going too far, maybe someone else might not consider going too far, and what I might consider fine, someone who's truly devout might consider too far. Obviously, no one wants to be mean, and no one wants to be. No, it's, you're poking fun at something that's a tradition, not at a person. But if someone wants to take something on personally, there's nothing I could do about that. So maybe that's the only thing I run into, but I consider nothing off limits within taste. It's not something that I even think about, because you can be lighthearted. You got to know your audience.
Okay, that's interesting, because you're coming from the comedic standpoint. You could easily offend somebody around the holidays. Zanaida, what kind of challenges have you run into?
I wouldn't say I run into many challenges in terms of it. It's really just more just kind of from a artistic standpoint. What can I write that hasn't been written before? Maybe that's something that I'm constantly thinking about. And I like what Amy said. I love the fact that you're doing stuff that hasn't been done before. Bringing up things and creating art that inspires conversation, for sure. About and in doing so, that helps us that helps bring depth to our experience in the holiday. So I would love to do more of that. I feel like the challenge has been to break out of the tradition of what's been done. Like, I need to write another Magnificat. Maybe no, I don't. Like, what are some themes and some words or some people or some situations that haven't been explored? And is there a way to explore these stories? I mean, holidays are built many of them are built around stories, right? So they're a way to tell these stories, and I feel like that's a challenge. Like, I want to find a way to tell new ways to tell old stories, and ways to tell new stories. I feel like that's sort of like the theme of life for right now, for me at least, is like, it all comes back to, what are you trying to do when you write? You're trying to tell a story. What are you trying to do with your audience? You're trying to tell them a story. What are you trying to do with your music? You're trying to tell a story so that people can connect, right? And so, like, that's just an ongoing challenge in trying to write music that's meaningful around any holiday.
Right. I'm assuming it must be especially challenging for Christmas, for example, as Paul kind of touched upon a little bit earlier. There is such an enormous repertoire of Christmas music. It's like, what can you really add? What has somebody not said yet about that holiday?
There's an opportunity to tell new stories that we don't necessarily always think about, because we think the only stories that matter are the old ones, maybe. That's sort of what I'm thinking about. So I'm like, I feel like that in terms of Christmas, like maybe that's where we can mine some of our material. Is like it would create some really interesting thing. And here's another holiday. Like, what about Thanksgiving? I feel like I'm just about ready to write music about Thanksgiving because there's so many great stories. There's so much comedy in that there. I mean, there's so much that can be grappled with, and so many connections with other like topics or important, things that we're thinking about in our social consciousness. Like that's what keeps it relevant, right? So like I think with Christmas, like it can be done. Like I feel like we know there's stuff out there. We just have to be brave enough to trust the new stories and new perspectives are needed and worth hearing.
I'd like to add to that actually, in that since the traditions that we're talking about are very old and the stories we're talking about are very old, I think there's a lot of value in giving it a new spin and also writing about how people today experience it. And
Yes.
there's a saying when you write lyrics for theater that the more specific you are, the more universal it is, which is true in any kind of storytelling. So if I say, for instance, discussed what it's like to hear about people being so passionate about a holiday when that's not my passion, or like if you grow up and you're not Christian but Christmas is all over the place in December, what's that like? And that's a feeling of being an outsider or not being included, and that's a feeling that could translate to a lot of things, but you're also using the holiday as a springboard to a discussion.
Yeah, you bring up so many good points. Michelle, how do you feel about that?
This past year, because of COVID, I decided that for Hanukkah, I would do this project called 8 Nights, 8 Lights. And I presented through YouTube and through Facebook a different piece that I had written in the past that has been performed, also one new from this year. And I agree with Paul that I love to write something new every year for the holiday season. Every day I would present some kind of reveal to the public, so that different perspectives would be looked at for the Hanukkah holiday. How do we present Hanukkah? How do we present all that beautiful, cozy holiday feeling of the family around the candles, the pride, the joy? I find that some of the challenges are, if I want to set a modern poem, of course, is the pursuit of the public domain, or how do we get permission to set it? And also just to, search Professor Google and find something that really speaks to me, that tells me something about the holiday that I haven't looked at before. So for example, the piece that you're presenting here is first of all, they're the candle blessings, but we all do the candle blessings in Hebrew. Well, why not do an English translation of the candle blessings and set by a modern poet, which I did by David Rosenberg, and then follow that with the Ma'oz Tzur, which is Rock of Ages. It's a ancient poem, which is sung every single night of Hanukkah. However, the tune that everybody around the world use is so ingrained in the Jewish experience. Well, how do you take that text now and decide, I'm going to set it to my own tune? And will that, will people take it? Will people listen to it? Will people decide maybe there's another way of looking at Ma'oz Tzur? So that was a challenge for me to tackle it, something which, and I'm sure you have that in all your holiday experiences, to tackle something that has been done for so many years. How do you go ahead and put a new spin on it?
You're already bringing something modern to an extremely old holiday, which I think is wonderful. Paul, you mentioned some challenges a little bit earlier. What have you experienced with writing holiday music?
You have to find a text that you think will work and that you connect to. And sometimes there's a very tight deadline crunch. So that's a challenge. I would say everyone's been kind of touching on putting a new spin, I guess it's your own personal spin, or something that you relate to deep down that wants to come out so that someone else might also relate to the text in a new way. I get something out of feeling connected to people a long time ago, but wanting to make that immediate so that it's not just a myth, that it's a present feeling.
Yeah, connecting the new to the old. I'm assuming all of you are probably working on this music all throughout the year. Maybe you're writing, maybe not. Maybe I'm totally wrong on that. Maybe it's a like scribble it out before a show is coming up or something. Are you finding you're kind of inspired in different parts of the year to write for a different holiday?
Finding new avenues and new meanings and new ways to explore things that previously existed is something that comes up. And I know for me, I listen to a lot of interviews and about books and other people's art. And sometimes they will use a turn of phrase that, this is often what happens, is that they use a turn of phrase that kind of acts like a pinball machine bumper for me and sends me spinning off in another direction just on that phrase. And that then, because the phrase fascinates me, because I'm so in love with language, it turned into something else. And it leads me to some other kind of place that has nothing to do with the person who uttered the phrase. And it's possible that that might become something about a holiday, or something like Zanaida said, that can it's about a feeling and a story or a relationship that could also be applicable to a holiday.
Does anybody else experience that? Like maybe something in the springtime makes you think of something around Thanksgiving?
Actually, this year I had written a piece called Handfuls of Wind a little while back, and this year I decided, this is an amazing Earth Day piece, because it speaks about thankfulness for everything in nature. So why not present it for Earth Day, which I did, and that went around. So it's nice to see when you've also just, you've written something that then you can look at it in a new way and say, that could be used for something else. Why not, right? Don't composers do that all the time?
I think to a large extent it does sort of naturally happen for me that I tend to be inspired somewhat to compose, like, in the summer I tend to be inspired to compose something for the fall, and vice versa.
It's the deadlines that really do it for me. Like that one contest that comes out every year, they don't even tell you what the forces will be for the piece until like early summer. So I'm often writing Christmas music in the summer. I think that's the most common time for me to write Christmas music, is June, July.
I feel that when the holidays around, particularly Christmas concerts come around, I feel like we're mainly hearing arrangements of old music as opposed to actually newly written pieces of music. Do you guys have trouble trying to get your music onto concerts? Is it challenging outside of maybe church or temple?
I wouldn't say that it's challenging. You mean because there is this a long-standing canon that there's this expectation to hear the favorites, and the traditions. I mean,
Yeah.
that is something I think, I can't remember who said it. It was one of us on this call earlier said it really depends on your audience. Maybe that was Amy that was talking about audience matters, like not, I think the audience that's going to listen to, that the favorites on that concert, and then, I'm probably writing that arrangement of some, some piece, probably, or some familiar text or something like that. But as a composer, like, I'm seeking to align myself with conductors and artists and organizations that want to tell the kinds of stories that I want to tell. I'm not really looking for I'm not expecting, like a pop concert performance of my work. Like, that's probably not going to happen. Which is fine. I don't think it would, well, I don't know, maybe we could work on that, but one day, but that's not what I'm here for. It's like, here's another honest to goodness truth. I'm very fortunate that I'm also a conductor, so I have an ensemble, and you better believe I program my music for my choirs. I really do, because as an educator, I want my students to have a well-rounded, somewhat well-rounded, I'm hoping, understanding of the various, cultures and traditions of their peers, because there's a lot of diversity in the classroom, diversity of religion background, cultural background, whatever, etc. And so I have to write music and find music that really speaks to that. And oftentimes it's not this, I can't, though you will get complaints. I will get complaints as a conductor sometimes. I find the concerts that are most compelling for my students, and for me as an artist, are the ones that tell the new stories, that tell things with a different kind of harmonic language, or with a different kind, or there's entirely new songs, that enable the listener or even the performer to connect with the holiday in a way they hadn't before. That's exciting. I think people are looking for that. And so in that sense, I don't think the search for that connection, that newness, is going to go away or goes away. And so therefore it's not hard to find places for the music to be performed. It just takes an effort towards creating the connection between yourself and the person, or the vehicle that's going to deliver the story you want to tell.
Are there holidays that you wish you could write for, but you feel like you're not able to?
I think I touched on that earlier when I said I really love the High Holy Days, but I've never felt drawn to compose something for it just because it's hasn't been part of my background or tradition. There's some holidays that you relate to very personally and deeply, but there's others that, like, I agree with that feeling of Thanksgiving, because that seems to go across everybody's religion, and the fact that it doesn't have any kind of tradition of Thanksgiving carols shouldn't stop us. There'll be concerts around that time, I would think, that could include Thanksgiving music, and there is very little of it. I hardly run into any pieces for Thanksgiving.
I also totally agree with Zanaida that I also, program my own music for the LA Jewish Community Children's Choir that I conduct, and other choirs that I'm involved with. And I also agree that the audience seems to always appreciate something new. I don't think that there's ever been a time where I've had any complaints about presenting something new. I also, depending on composers that I'm in touch with, I always ask, do you have something new to send to me? Because please do. I want to see it. I want to see if I can program it. Even, it doesn't have to be, like I said before, we don't need something that's totally about Christmas. It doesn't have to be totally about Hanukkah. It can be around that feeling of illuminations, around light, bringing joy.
We're all thankful that we're going to get to be together, and that's not necessarily a religious thing at all. That's just a thing. And I say, and I'm a fan of saying, Thanksgiving is when you make it. You can take any weekend to say, I'm so glad to have the chance to just be here with you. And whether it's to break bread, or whether it's to, just sit here and talk to you and be in the same room with you. I think that's really important to know that, that's when, I always think it's very important to know that when, the calendar says it's one thing, but that's the kind of holiday that, like I said, it's when you make it. If I can come see you in March, that's Thanksgiving.
To think, not only, I want to write something, but also, again, it's about the connections that I want to make with potential other artists, or who else is doing this, or is there other energy? Because we also have to cultivate an environment to receive that, and we have to cultivate like the energy around this idea that we need to be thankful. We ought to be thankful that we're here, and that it's not last year. And we ought to have so much to celebrate and be thankful about and to reflect on. And it would be really great to put some energy around just building, building up or starting some kind of, repertoire around Thanksgiving. I love the idea. Yeah, yeah. If I'm seeing you, if I can't get to see you until March, then March is when Thanksgiving is happening. I mean, but the same is true of other holidays too. Like, don't we sometimes feel like we're, you've heard of like Christmas in July? I mean, not just because that's when I happen to be writing my Christmas music, but it's like, because sometimes these feelings come up like throughout the year, right? And it's like, it's great to have some music to go along with that. And I really think, and I bet you there is plenty of music out there about gratitude. I'm sure of it. 'Cause, we all, I'm in this church and we've sung about thank you. We sing thank you, Lord, in the church, but it's not like Thanksgiving-y, like, so that's the thing. Like, I want to, like, let's create something. It's like Thanksgiving, you deserve your own thing. Like, let's do that. That's what I'd love to do.
I think it's important to add the secular to these things, though. I really do, because there's a whole mess of people there who don't do that.
This is true.
Well, Thanksgiving is totally a secular holiday. I don't see it as being sacred at all.
Right. Well, and also there's a lot to be thankful for in if you look at it from a modern perspective, or even more than a grander power perspective. If you look at it from, I'm thankful that you did this. I'm thankful that I had the strength to overcome blah, blah, blah. I'm thankful that, this family made the effort for blah, blah, blah. I'm thankful for what you gave to me. You can make it personal. You can make it, it doesn't necessarily have to be ecclesiastical.
I actually started writing non-religious Christmas music as well. There's so much about the season of winter and the hope for spring to come, and there's a lot of traditions already in the winter season that we can touch on.
Agreed.
There are a lot of different winter traditions, and of course it's not winter in the Southern Hemisphere. Right. So they're having a completely different experience of Christmas.
Do you all have favorite holiday music or a particular performance that sticks out to you in your mind just over the years, something that has always stuck with you?
I wrote a piece called Umoja, which is really kind of this kind of simple canon round, and the words are just Umoja. It's one word, right? And it's repeated. My favorite, I didn't realize this would become my favorite piece, but the thing is we recorded it. And so I taught, when I used to be the artistic director of the San Gabriel Valley Choral Company, I started a children's choir called Kids in Concert. And I taught it to my kids in concert students, who were all, it was grades K through 5. So I had some little ones in there. I remember teaching it to them, and it's not difficult, but I just felt like I was trying to herd cats, trying to get these people to sing together, and the grown-ups, it's supposed to be like a congregational experience, easy enough that everyone could learn it by rote and we can all sing it together, and and I just felt like, man, I don't know if that went that well, but because I have it recorded, I go back and I listen to it, and no, it is absolutely not clean at all. But that's not the point. Like, it's just hearing those babies' voices. Oh, they're so cute with their spread vowels and, on accented syllables that not supposed to be accented, whatever. It's so precious. And I look back on that, and now I remember that performance. I was like, we were all together in that room with that surrounding that audience with these kids up here, and we hadn't done that before. It was our very first time, and some of those kids, it was their very first concert, and they were so into it. Ooh, you've ever seen like little kids who are so into singing? Like, that I will never forget. And I just like, calm down about the whole, it needs to be perfect, doesn't sound good. It's not about that.
Well, just to speak to what Zanaida just said, I mean, that's why I love leading the Jewish Community Children's Choir, because, I really feel like I'm passing the torch, that they're, you know, you're contributing to the future, and it's so important when you see that, when you're touching someone that way. It just, you know, you feel real joy and real, how do we say, in Yiddish we say nachas. It's like overjoyousness. It really brings something, that you're helping them continue the tradition and feel great about it.
Right.
In terms of a performance, I think the one that you're going to play here, which was you know, I wrote this, it was a big piece with chorus and full symphony and baritone solo. That was a wonderful concert, you know, memory. Always when you're involved with such, you know, if you're writing, you know, a big work, and just takes so much of your time and all the parts, and when you finally hear it, as Paul said, it's terrific.
Paul, how about you? Does something stand out for you?
The first time the Master Chorale did anything by me was for a Christmas concert, a family Christmas concert. And it was a piece I'd written long time ago. I mean, I practically barely remember it, but somehow Grant responded to it and decided to do the English version. It was written in German originally. And I was still in the group. So standing there singing, and I remember him giving the pitches as he does with his falsetto, and that was really great. Unfortunately, being a family concert, there was a child that went crazy and started screaming and crying and just a tantrum of major proportions. And his father finally took him out of the room just before the piece was over. And it turned out that child was Grant's nephew. So I'll never forget that, but for a lot of reasons.
The first time I sang in Disney Hall was 2005 when Harry Shearer and Judith did their first concert, their first Christmas Without Tears, and it was a one night only thing, and it was sold out, and the show is extremely irreverent. And at the time I wasn't doing my own stuff yet, and I was still in the Bobs. And one of the things that I love most in life, and particularly this is pandemic related, is to become part of something bigger, is to sing with a group and disappear into the bigger sound. That's always been it for me. That is the be all and end all. I don't care if I ever sing a solo in my life again. It's finding the place where, you know, where you all know this, where everything's buzzing, and it's just another world. It's otherworldly. And to do that at Disney Hall, where there was no, you know, electronic amplification, and it was an octet that I sang in. We called ourselves the OK Chorale, and we did 3 Alfred Burt carols, which, as you all know, are kind of obscure to a general public. All caroling people know them, but it's, you know, with all the major sevenths and all that stuff, it's just so, I love those carols. And John Michael Higgins was conducting, and if you know who he is, he's the guy from the he hosts America Says right now, but he played one of the goofy judges in the Pitch Perfect movies. And the joke is that he is a huge a cappella nerd, and in real life. And so it was just 8 of us singing these Burt carols, you know, just in a U formation, and he was conducting, and it was Disney Hall, and it was sold out. And it was just so joyful to make this sound in this beautiful place with these wonderful people, and the whole feeling, you know, it'd been lighthearted, and just to get to do it and to disappear into it. It was one of the most beautiful things ever. And I sang
Very
it just
nice.
later with huger groups, but in that octet, it was just an, you know, when it just flows through you, and you feel amazing to have been part of that tide, and that you did disappear, and that the audience, like, you could hear a pin drop because it's almost like they felt it too. And that's the beauty of it too, and that's something we've missed so much during this time, is that collaboration with other artists is one thing, but collaboration also means collaboration with an audience, and that there's a give and take, and there's an energy that cannot be replaced over the Zoom, you know.
Correct.
So I would say a group experience, it was disappearing into it, and to the beauty of it, and the acoustic beauty of it, and the energy of it in 2005.
All of your experiences are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. And thank you so much for being here today and chatting about holiday music. I'm so appreciative of your time and just really appreciate you all.